public dialogue process is really important in developing the national food strategy, because it's not just a strategy for farmers or for food businesses, it's a strategy that's going to concern all of us as citizens and consumers.
People are drawing the line between environmental issues, food issues, and mental health and wellbeing issues for us as citizens in the UK. And I think there is a greater recognition that all of these things are interrelated and we have to start dealing with them together.
Food plays a really important role in our society. It's obviously really important to keep us alive, for our health. It's part of how we socialise, part of our culture. But it's also really important from an economic perspective. We produce lots of food, we have lots of food manufacturers, we export lots of food. One thing that is really important is the policy and regulations that are in place that determine how food can be produced.
Each bit of that chain from the field to your dinner table or your breakfast table takes in a vast number of people. The people who take it from the farmer, the people who store it and then take it to the distribution centres, the people who, or pack it even.
On one level, our food system has worked quite well and is working quite well. But on another level, it misses deeply some of the issues to do, particularly with inequality according to income, access to healthy diets, and access to food that is produced with the means of not impacting heavily on the environment.
I believe that access to food is a fundamental human right. If we can always bring to the fore, in amongst all the other discussions around the types of food available, choice, meat or no meat, that we think about those that do not have.
So if we think about the COVID-19 pandemic, that's shown how vulnerable the food system is in terms of food supplies, the length and complexity of supply chains and so on. We might also think about longer term change like the climate crisis, where as individuals we can make some small changes to our behaviour, but where there are also clear responsibilities for others in a more institutional setting to take decisions on our behalf.
During lockdown, we had a lot of people coming to Which who are really struggling to access the food supplies that they need. And that really showed, I think, how COVID-19 put pressure on the system. Initially, we saw a lot of food shortages in supermarkets. There was huge demand for food deliveries in a way that there hasn't been before. That raised some really interesting questions where, up until now, I think we have tended to assume that the market will be able to provide the sorts of foods that we want. But then the government had to intervene and make sure that supermarkets and food businesses were working effectively together to provide the sorts of choices that consumers needed.
One of the interesting things I think about COVID is that it is changing our expectations around what is food for, away from our busy lives and just rushing into supermarkets and grabbing what's on the shelves, to making us think about what is the future.
We need to ensure the legacy of the pandemic is not ever increasing numbers of people falling into ill health. Within about 2 to 3 weeks of the COVID-19 building up to lockdown and beyond, we saw a 900% increase in numbers of people attending.
In the past, when we've had a problem with food supply, the answer has often been, well, let's just get it from somewhere else, from Brazil or New Zealand or Australia. But I think there is a big long-term change coming down the track that may really change the way we can do that, and that is climate change.
Our food system has been the major driver of climate change, the major polluter in the environment, the major cause of deforestation and biodiversity loss. It's a major driver of poor air quality in cities. It's a major user of water and polluter of water. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, talking about food and climate was way off left field. Now it's becoming central. People are starting to recognise and being willing to think about changing.
One of the things my many years working in sustainability has taught me is the risk of unintended consequences. You try to solve one problem, but you accidentally create a problem somewhere else.
There are all kinds of repercussions where producing food that's local and seasonal here in the UK might actually have quite devastating consequences on food producers in other parts of the world.
Everybody has their part to play in this. Obviously, the food industry wants to produce things that people want to buy. So it takes its signals from what people put in their shopping baskets. Government's job is to ensure that things like safety are paramount, that nothing is put on the market that is going to do positive harm to people, that things are properly labelled, that consumers know what they're buying. I think there is a debate as to whether government should go beyond that and start giving people prescriptive dietary advice.
Can I really go to a supermarket and buy food that I know is being produced in a sustainable way without adverse impacts on farmer livelihoods and that is good for my health? Or do I go in and I buy things because they got nice labels on and they are labelled in an appealing way, but actually they are produced in a way that doesn't chime at all with my internal value system? I think that is a key question that we need to address.
My passion is always about food poverty, and so my question to you really is why are members of the community that you live in not able to put food on the table?
Is there too much advice, and are the wrong people giving it? Is it basically very privileged people telling the rest of us what to do, people who sometimes have had no problems in their lives at all, telling us how to live when we're sometimes on very limited incomes?
Now is the moment really to think about what should the future of the food system be? Should we have long supply chains or short supply chains? Should it be based on healthy diets? What should we be growing? How should we grow it, etc.? Now is the time to examine these questions.
Do we have a system that's fit for purpose, and how would you change it to make sure it was more resilient for the future?